It's time for On Point with Julian Phillips.
Welcome to this edition of On Point. And this On Point, I'm taking off the boxing gloves. We're going to get into it, folks. Can we air our dirty laundry today? Can we talk? My question to you is, those of you who are black, how do you define your blackness? How black do you think you are compared to somebody else who's black? Are they as black as you? Are they black enough? Are you blacker than the person who grew up in the suburbs if you grew up in the projects? Do you think you're blacker if you like rap music as opposed to a person who's black that likes opera? Do you think you're blacker if you're a Democrat as opposed to being a black Republican? Do you think that you're blacker if you went to an historically black university or a white one? Just who's black? When I was growing up, I grew up in a middle-class black neighborhood. I didn't grow up in the hood, like my wife. Was a member of a gang. I was a pretty good basketball player too. Earned my stripes. But when I went to high school, a number of the black players there thought I wasn't black enough because I didn't speak like that. I wasn't like, yo, bro, down this and that. I spoke, I guess, the good King's English, and I got good grades. But I was being white to some of them, or so they thought. Interesting. When it comes to the historically black colleges and universities, great. My college roommate, I went to Purdue University, Big Ten school, and he was talking to a woman who went to Spelman. She was saying, well, you're not really black or not as black if you didn't go to a historically black college university. Well, little did she know that the National Society of Black Engineers was started and formed at Purdue University. Just how black are you? Are you blacker because you like rap music as opposed to country music, say? I'm just wondering. Are you blacker if you were born in the United States as opposed to the Caribbean countries? Are you blacker because your skin is blacker as opposed to it being lighter? If you're a black woman, are you blacker if you have shorter hair as opposed to longer hair? Are you blacker if you are a black Latino and you speak Spanish? Or maybe you consider yourself whiter because you speak Spanish. I remember being on the subway sometimes and you find folks that were as dark as anything, but they were speaking the loudest Spanish to make sure folks know that they were black. How do you see yourself? How do you measure your blackness? How do you put yourself in the African diaspora? Who is black? I can tell you one thing. If you're a racist, you're only one word to them. And you know what that word is. I'm not going to repeat that here. Are you blacker if you listen to Richard Pryor as opposed to a white comedian? Are you blacker if you eat fried chicken and watermelon as opposed to a black person who doesn't? Let me go one step further. Are you ashamed of your black? I will eat watermelon in a 4-star restaurant and eat my fried chicken too. Because I embrace this. Why is it that things that are black are negative and things that are white are positive? Why is watermelon negative when an Italian eating a cannoli or an Italian ice or pizza or pasta or shrimp scampi is positive? Are you more black if you like hog maws and chitlins as opposed to bolognese or creme de brulee? How do we define being black these days? And are we ever going to get beyond this? The thing is that we have to get beyond. We as black people, especially now, we're on the precipice of change. Once again, we were in the 60s, we now are again. But we're not going to move further than we are if we can't get past ourselves. If we don't love ourselves in totality, no matter what your experience is as a black person, whether you're Republican or Democrat, Republican or conservative or liberal or whatever it is, we're all black. And we all have different experiences. But one doesn't preclude the other as being more black than anybody else. We have to get away from this. We can't stay here anymore. We can't. Otherwise, for the next 400 years, we're going to be in the same place that we are now. We have to celebrate each other, even if we agree to disagree. Being black ain't easy. Not for any of us. We got to get beyond this. That's my sermon for today. You know, I always like the sermons in church where they had the offering after the sermon. Yeah, I like that because, see, when you have the offering after the sermon, if it's a good sermon, you're going to get more on that plate. See? And I'm talking about, you know, if you get a good sermon, I'm saying, pass that plate, and I don't want to hear no noise. I want nothing but paper in there. Let's get beyond where we are now. Celebrate our blackness. Stop beating up on one another. I'm not saying that everybody does that. Don't get me wrong. But there's a lot of us that do. And a lot of us that are not comfortable in our own skin. I'm comfortable in my skin. I like being black. I'm just as comfortable with a brother on the street corner as I am with a brother in the corporate board. I celebrate all of them. I try to lift up. I try to motivate. I try to elevate. I also try to understand. And I try to pray for those too that need help. You know who some of those people are. Do I need to mention their names in public office? Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. You know, the brother that sits on the Supreme Court. I got to pray for them. They're still black. And I can honor that. Although I vehemently disagree with their politics. But they're still black. Let's learn to celebrate. Let's learn to try to reach out to each other and understand each other. There is the reading of the saying of this sermon on point today. We got a lot to cover in a short period of time, and I'm going to bring in, of course, none other than my friend and yours, Eric Ham, political analyst out of Washington, D.C., via Detroit, Motown, and the best-selling author, Eric. On point again. I had to let it out there, Eric. You know, we as black people got to get it together if we're going to move forward. You know, that's just how I feel. But
hey, man, I'm passing that plate. I thought that was a beautiful sermon.
Thanks, brother. You know, what did Martin Luther King say? Something about live as brothers and perish as fools or whatever.
Yeah, that's right.
Know, come on, you know, we look, you know. Anyway, look, we got a lot to talk about. Speaking of fools, well, I shouldn't say that. So we have what was it Trump's niece Mary coming out with this book. What's the name of that book, Eric? It's Too Much and Not Enough. Lord have mercy. She talks about some stuff in this book.
She does. She lets it all hang out in this book, and it's pretty interesting because we have seen a number of tell-all books since President Donald Trump was inaugurated. Bob Woodward has written a book. A number of people who have worked for him have written books. But this is the first time that we're seeing a book by someone so close to him, someone who grew up around him, someone who is part of the family. It's almost like reading, a book of a mafia family or something, and getting like an inside peek, not only into the man himself, but what made him the person that he is. And that's what's so fascinating, because we're talking about not just a relative, a niece, but someone who's also a trained clinical psychologist. So she's not only writing about what she witnessed over 50 years being part of the Trump family, but she's also giving us what it means clinically and how he's impacting the country as a result of his narcissism, of his selfishness, of his self-centeredness.
Well, listen, we want to get into that, and we can't spend too much time on it. But before we get into that, there's somebody else that needs to get on the couch, and that's Trump's press secretary, Kelly McEnany. Listen, she comes out with this insanity, Eric. Well, the book is all lies and this and that. But then the next thing that comes out of her mouth, she says, well, I haven't read the book. So how do you know if it's all lies if you haven't read it?
One of the first things she said to us on day one is, I will never lie to you. And I think that lasted probably as long as it took for it to come out of her mouth.
Amen.
Because again, this is a president who, again, as his niece has said, has just lived a life of cheating and lies. And so I think you cannot work for him and not be the same way. And that's what we're seeing out of this press secretary.
All right. So look, quickly, let's get into some of the salacious points there. I know one is that apparently she said he's a child in an adult body. Okay. So what else is she saying? What else?
She did. And, I'll quote exactly what she says here, because she says, fear, the equivalent of weakness in our family, is as unacceptable to him now as it was when he was 3 years old. She points to New York Governor Andrew Cuomo's response to his state's outbreak of COVID-19 cases as an example of real leadership, further revealing the president as, and I'm quoting, petty, pathetic little man, ignorant, incapable, out of his depth, and lost to his own delusional spin. That's going to be a really interesting Thanksgiving dinner this year.
Well, now, has the book come out yet? Because I don't think it actually has. Or correct me if I'm wrong.
No, the book has not come. The book has not come out yet. Two things: the book has not come out yet, but Simon & Schuster, the publisher of the book, has actually pushed the release date up 2 weeks because of the pent-up demand. And many of us in the media, we have already gotten copies of the book, which is why we're able to look at these excerpts. In addition to that, Simon & Schuster is able to promote the book. However, Mary Trump herself is not, because there is still a temporary restraining order placed on her that does not allow her to actually speak on the book, because she's under a non-disclosure agreement that she signed as a result of the estate of Fred Trump and what she received from the estate. And so she's still fighting and pushing that. But again, the book is going to be out in a matter of days, Julia.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what, if you get a copy of it ahead of time, fine. But, I'll tell you what, forget about John Bolton's book. I'll pay for this one. I'll pay for this one. This is going to be some good summer reading, brother. I'm telling you.
It is.
Lord, okay. Look, let's move on. We got to talk about it. First of all, we already know that Trump is going to trash the book. Kelly McEnany's already trashed it. She hasn't read the book, but of course she's trashing it. So we know that already. But I want to see it, because I'm pretty sure I'm going to believe everything that Mary says in this book. All right, let's move on here. We were talking before the show about the culture wars with Trump. Talking about the Confederate flag. These are our symbols. Of course, those kinds of things. The culture wars that Trump is trying to use, I guess, to get reelected. I don't see how that's going to work.
No, and in fact, what we're seeing from this president, and let's just go back now, because we've always seen dog whistles on these issues from presidential candidates. We've seen it from Richard Nixon with the Southern strategy. We saw it from George H.W. Bush, Willie Horton. But we have never seen a president running for re-election being so overt in his racism and his support of these monuments, of these symbols that actually are seen as oppressive, violent towards an entire race of people. And so that's what we're seeing from this president. And what it speaks to is a president who is desperately seeking to not only energize his base, but to find that note, to find that one hit that can actually put him back on top. And so what we're seeing is a president that's doubling down, even though those around him believe that this is a loser for this president, this administration, and for Senate Republicans.
Absolutely. And in fact, we're seeing some now that are not falling in line with the president. Senator Lindsey Graham is coming out now saying that the Confederate flag should be banned. So we're starting to see more cracks in the armor of the Republican Party when it comes to aligning themselves behind Donald Trump.
That's right. And not only are we seeing cracks, we're beginning to see, gushing of water, because not only is he losing some of his Republican base, but it's those evangelicals also are beginning to move. In fact, what we're seeing is Joe Biden, who many know as a Catholic, we're beginning to see many of those evangelicals begin to move and side with Joe Biden. So this is a moment, this is a time right now where the president is flailing, and we're seeing it in the polls. And what he's doing is he's dragging down the party. And Julian, if he can't turn this around, this is not going to just be a shellacking for the top of the ticket. We can see the entire GOP implode as a result of this.
Yeah, I know. We got to keep our eyes on this. This is going to be interesting. Moving along here quickly now, COVID-19 obviously affecting people of color more so than any other groups, ethnic groups or races in this country right now. And we're seeing a surge in many parts of the country. But what we're also seeing, though, are people who are still not sure, that are dumbfounded, confused, as I would say, about wearing masks and doing the simple things that would make life better, that would make people safer.
And Julian, this has actually become now a hot button issue politically in terms of where you stand, if you're wearing a mask or if you're not wearing a mask. And we have seen so many individuals pushing back. How many people have lost their jobs because of the way they have reacted towards people who are asking them to wear a mask? And on top of that, initially, this was a virus that was hitting overwhelmingly people of color, largely African Americans and elderly people. But now we're seeing younger people and more people in red states being hardest hit by this. Places like Florida, Texas, Arizona, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Chattanooga, Tennessee. These are people now, because, again, these are people who refuse to wear masks. And now we're seeing them fall victims to this virus.
Unbelievable. Last but not least, as we close out here, Senator Kelly Loeffler with the WNBA. She's the co-owner of, I think it's called the Dream. She does not want to embrace Black Lives Matter. The NBA or WNBA, the players there are like saying, look, why don't you relinquish your ownership, because you obviously don't believe us. You can own black bodies. And I guess owning black bodies is good enough for you, like they owned black bodies back during the days of slavery. And you don't give a gosh darn what we think as black people. What's your thought?
This is someone who is endorsed by Donald Trump. She's running for re-election in the U.S. Senate in Georgia. She's trailing. But again, she's doubling down because, like President Trump, she believes this is her base and this is her signature issue. But at the same time, I'm seeing remnants of Donald Sterling of the Los Angeles Clippers, who, of course, was caught on tape saying some inflammatory things and eventually lost his team as a result. And I think we could see that happen with her. Not only is we could see this woman lose both her team and her Senate race, all in an effort to again align herself with President Trump and suggesting and calling Black Lives Matter a symbol of hate.
Eric, this is a weekly show, but we could do something every day, and with everything that's going on, perhaps every hour. But I'm sure there's going to be a lot to talk about. I think we're going to be doing something different next week because our executive producer is going on vacation. But we got a great show lined up for next week. But the week after, I expect to see you back, and we're going to have obviously a lot to talk about. Man, thanks for being on the show today.
You bet. Always a pleasure. Thanks, Julian.
There's a lot to think about these days. I talked about earlier in my little monologue at the top of the show, what is blackness and what it means. or what should it mean? I guess in closing, I also want to say, what does it mean to be free? We've got COVID-19, and we have people out there refusing to wear masks. I saw this one older man, he was fighting with some security guard at a shopping center and fell on the ground, almost split his head open because he didn't want to wear a mask. I'm exercising my freedom. Well, freedom ain't free. So you're free, huh? Well, you're not free to walk down the street buck naked. You're not free to go to the beach nude. You're not free to go into somebody's restaurant without adhering to their rules, like wearing a shirt or shoes. Or maybe you can't come in with shorts on because you're coming into their establishment. How do you define freedom? What does it mean to you? Does it mean that you can do just whatever you want, even though your idea or perception of freedom will impede on somebody else's rights, on somebody else's health? What does freedom mean to you? Think about that. Think about that when somebody challenges you about wearing a mask in the midst of a pandemic where over 130,000 people have died and 3 million affected. Think about that. But more importantly, on point today, I want you to meditate. And you don't have to agree with me now. That's not the purpose of this. My purpose is to try to keep everybody on point. It doesn't necessarily have to be my point. But I want you to think about this week on what it really means to be Black. Do you think you're Blacker than somebody else? Why? What makes you Blacker? What makes you better? Are you? Think about that. See you next week.